Hi, welcome to Writing Conversations. Romy is here with me today. I'm so excited. We're going to continue talking about K-dramas and what can we as novelists learn from them. And today's topic is kind of like a double-edged sword. One, we wanted to talk about Senpai, which is the sadness and melodrama part. And the other one we wanted to talk is yearning. We'll see where this takes us today, but I'm very excited. I always feel like we are overly ambitious every time when we want to talk about all these things, and then we end up not having enough time. So
Yeah, we take all these detours to get there and
it's very detoury. Okay, Romy, introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are, just in case.
Great. Well, I'm Romy Sommer and I am in Johannesburg, South Africa, so down in the southern hemisphere in winter at the moment. And I write contemporary romance. I've just started my first ever sort of romantasy, um, which is very exciting. And I'm basing it thanks to you. That last chat we had last month on story structure, I am actually putting that into the new book. So it's going to be a whole new structure.
Woo, exciting. Oh, so we now need to talk about romantasy because I'm writing a fantasy with romance. I don't know if it's going to be romantasy, but it is going to have a heavy, heavy romantic subplot. I cannot get away from my romance route, so we might need to talk about
Yes.
that also because that's super exciting. And I'm Gala Russ. I'm a writing coach and an author of romance books. Now I'm writing, as I just mentioned, what I'm calling right now urban fantasy trilogy, most likely. Oh my God. Just the whole I have so many doubts. Can I pull this one off? This seems to be a very big and ambitious project. And I love helping beginner authors who are trying to figure out how to write a first novel, and also anybody who wants to have a romance or a romantic subplot in their genre fiction or literary fiction or memoir. But if you're like, how do I do this romance part? I can absolutely help you with that. And this is why we love talking about K dramas and figuring out things that we can learn from other sources. Because I always think that storytelling is such a fun thing to look at outside of the specific form of storytelling that you're doing, which novels is for us. And we're together learning from Korean dramas here. So here we go.
Me,
Let's
it's just
start back.
trying to figure out that magic, like you get to, once you start watching K-dramas, you'll end up getting obsessed about them. And then you want to figure out what is that magic source? Why am I obsessed? And how can
Yeah.
I get people obsessed about my books in the same
Yeah.
way?
Yes. And I think we all like different things about Korean dramas. And then for me, I was having a conversation with a student of mine via email about humor and sadness. And because I was born in the USSR and I kind of grew up in on all of those like Russian classics where everything is sad and horrible for the most part, like it just like happily ever after is not the goal ever. I think the melodrama of it all in Korean dramas absolutely resonates with me hugely. And one of the first soap operas that we got in Russia were in like, I want to say early 90s, were from like Mexico and South America. And the country loved them because we did not have soap opera as a genre at that point in Russia. Now they exist. I feel like I told that to you. And I think I since then loved soap operas, and I love that heightened, dramatic, everything is going to be bad part. And I think the K drama totally feeds whatever inside me yearns for that. So I don't know. That's why I wanted to talk about senpai. Let's do the definition of senpai. Do you want to do it? Do you want me to
No,
define it?
go for it. You can.
So the way I wrote it down, and Sinpa, and I actually have it written in Korean, and now I'm learning Korean alphabet, and I'm like, I can
Ooh.
actually read that. I actually know what each symbol means, like what each sound means. It's a Korean storytelling tradition that emphasizes intense emotion, sacrifice, longing, like calling it yearning, also tragedy. There's usually a link to family bonds, and there's usually some kind of like emotional catharsis at the end. And originally, the word was referring to a style of melodramatic theater and later films that featured suffering protagonists, self-sacrifice, impossible love. Again, for enemies to lovers, trope lovers, and I definitely one of them. So much of that. Illness, poverty, family separation, tearful reunion. So like the darker, harder side of life. But in the modern world, what I understood is that a lot of Koreans talk, when they talk about Senpai, they sometimes talk about like melodrama and like emotional manipulation, like over the top. And it's not necessarily a positive word or like a good thing. It has this a little bit negative connotation of too muchness, like, oh, you're doing too much of those things. You're trying too hard to tug on your on the viewer's heartstrings. But in the Western culture, I think people who are watching and like K drama fans are still thinking it about it a little bit more in the OG terms. I don't think that there is as much burnout because I think the rest of the Western culture feeds us a slightly different um, format around this particular topic, and I don't think we've oversaturated with it yet. Just like my personal observation, I have no this has no scientific basis underneath it. So, what do you think about like how? Tell me your thoughts on Senpai, and do you?
Absolutely. I agree, but I actually think if you've watched some of the earlier K dramas from, I haven't watched anything admittedly pre sort of like 2002, but if you look at like Coffee Prince or Secret Garden, I'm just saying Boys Over Flowers, they do have that. It's much more melodramatic, and particularly, I mean, Boys Over Flowers is was such a huge breakout success for K dramas. It was the first major K drama. Well, I think they were already starting to be popular throughout the rest of Asia at that time, but it was the one that really put K dramas on the map, and it put Lee Min Ho on the map, and it still has a following now, 20 plus years later. But watching it, I watched it. Was it last year? I think. And it was just like, what am I watching? Because it was just one tragedy after the other. And it was just like, how many bad things can happen? And of course, every moment was just dragged out for this emotion. And so when you look back at those like early 2000 K dramas, I think you could see, as you said, the melodrama side of Sinpa, the over the topness of it, the just one tragedy after the next. And over the years, it's been refined. So the K dramas that are coming
Mhm.
out today, and I do wonder, is it because they've gone so global that they're now pulling back a bit, maybe to appeal to a wider audience?
Mhm.
Or is it just that they've grown? Evolution, we all, hopefully grow and learn and figure out what's working, what's not. But the ones today are definitely different. Um, and it's interesting. I thought that you mentioned the heavy Russian novels and that you grew up with, because Western tradition had them too. If you think Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and they were dark and they were big amplified feelings. And somehow we've, particularly in romance, I think over the last say 20, 30 years, we've also, well, maybe even the whole of the 20th century, we've sort of watered it down. And it almost, and I'm thinking particularly like Hollywood watered down. If you think about some of those lovely rom-coms, that some of the best stuff that came out of the 90s, Sweet Home Alabama and The Proposal, and I'm sure you can think of a bunch more. They don't have that life and death stakes. They've got like witty banter and cute little moments, but they don't have that passion, that surging, deep emotional passion.
The Wuthering Heights is definitely like comes to mind right away when you're talking about the impossible love, right? Everything going wrong for them. Yeah.
And I think that's what K dramas gives us. It taps into that need, the need that obviously that there is a reason why those Russian novels were so heavy and deep, and why people still read them today. Says me, who I'm afraid Dr. Zhivago was the only one I've read. But
Oh, I
it,
highly recommend Dostoevsky, especially if you like thriller or crime or murdery type of vibes, because it really, really reads a lot more like that than you think. I think the hardest part for non-Russian speaker is all of the names. And so as long as you can get over that, it is actually it reads very well. It like it's a very fun read. So
Oh,
I'm
let's
like,
give it a
go
try.
for Crime and Punishment. Like it's exciting.
No.
I think it feels scary, but it's actually a very good read.
Hmm. But
Um,
that's exactly it. There's obviously something there that's tapping into what readers love, and in the same way that K dramas do. So, yeah, I think it's easy to dismiss those heightened emotions as melodrama, but there's obviously something in there that's working and resonating. So that's what we as writers also need to figure out what's working, why, and how to tap into it.
Yeah, I had three notes. One of the writers that I really love, Kennedy Ryan. I do not know if you've read her. She writes romance,
Yes.
but I feel like she taps into that so well. There are some of her. Oh my God, don't remember right now the name, but it's the basketball series. It's where the guys are basketball players. Oh my God. It taps into this type of melodrama and Senpai and yearning and forbidden love and life stuff going horribly. I devoured them. Clearly, something is wrong with my brain. I need that kind of stuff. But I think that is one of the reasons why I also like romantasy. And I think that could be, in my opinion, a reason why romantasy is so popular because instead like in contemporary unless you go mafia or something like that, which I wonder is also why mafia is popular, it is just a little harder to put high stakes. And in romantasy you absolutely like life or death, which is the highest stake you basically can put in a novel, is a very easy thing to have. And thus you kind of automatically create a much higher stakes, create much higher contrast, and the emotions are bigger and sacrifices are bigger, right? So it's built in because in a fantasy world, we're more allowed to have that. I think sci fi as well, just because, like the life of each individual versus the life of a whole planet, you kind of, or, the survival of human race or some whatever alien race, it just the stakes automatically grow. And in the modern world, I feel like again with Russian novels, I'm also thinking about one of my, I think, novels that coded my DNA was the Les Miserables. The what is it called in English? Les Mis,
Yeah.
everybody calls them, right? It's the giant novel. I remember I was reading it in middle school and I was sitting there on the couch and crying. And my mom was like, "Why are you reading this? As if you're like crying nonstop. Just stop reading this book." I'm like, "No, this is so good." I'm like, "Oh, this is so good." She could
But
not
then I think
understand.
yeah, you mentioned earlier about the emotional catharsis, and that's exactly it. That's what makes it so good. And you don't want to stop doing it because you're enjoying getting that release of those emotions out in a safe environment and in a safe way. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we can definitely play with that as novelists. And I am wondering if you have any advice around that for contemporary romance versus, I think, for other genres, how can we use this? How can we create this type of experience for the reader?
Mhm. Well, as you said, it is very much genre, baked into the genre. So if you think again, going back to K dramas, for me, one of the biggest Sinpa moments is Goblin, and it was the first thing that came to mind when I was reading the questions and the notes you sent, was just a bit of a spoiler alert, but towards the end of Goblin, there's that rooftop scene where they finally take the sword out of him, and if you haven't seen it, I think it is on. Actually, I don't know if it's on Netflix in the US, but certainly here in South Africa, it's on Netflix as Guardian, the Lonely and Great God. And most people just call it Goblin. But there's this amazing moment. It's this highly dramatic scene, and basically it's a death scene, and there's trauma. And, the Goblin has this flaming sword removed from his chest that's been stuck there for like 900 years, and then he just disappears off into and the poor heroine is on this rooftop just breaking down in tears, and she's just like bereft, and it's that heightened emotion of that moment. But it is it is a fantasy. It's got all these fantasy elements. He's this, 900 plus year old immortal kind of
Oh,
soul.
I'm
So
totally watching
as you,
that. It's all
so
the
that's
buttons.
baked in. But then obviously you've got the more dramatic stories like an Uncontrollably Fond, which is contemporary, but it's definitely, and just a spoiler alert for any romance readers who want to watch Uncontrollably Fond, it does not have a happy ending. It's still absolutely worth watching, but go into it not expecting your traditional HEA because you will be disappointed. But it is this beautiful, moving story. And I don't want to give away too much, but basically, the hero is diagnosed with cancer at the very beginning, the very opening episode. In fact, I think it might even be the first scene is where he gets the diagnosis of cancer. So you know that this is not going to be a light, fluffy, rom-com-y story. So again, lots of heightened emotions in that story, but it makes sense because you've got this heavy subject matter. The difficulty, I think, for most romance writers, especially if you're writing contemporary romance or rom-com, is how do you get that heightened emotion when your characters don't have those stakes? It's not life or death. And I think another great example of that is, I think it was about 2015 or 2016, there was a K-drama called Don't Dare to Dream. It's also called Jealousy Incarnate. And this one, interesting enough, also has a cancer theme, but in this case, it really is quite a light and fluffy rom-com. So the male lead and the female lead work together in I think a TV newsroom or news environment. Her mother died of cancer. She's very aware of it, so she is constantly getting tested. I think her mother and her grandmother. And meanwhile, she actually helps the male lead discover that he has breast cancer, which I didn't know was a thing, but male breast cancer, that's
Absolutely
basically a
thing.
major theme of this K-drama. And
Mhm.
again, you would think this is going to be heavy. It's not. It's handled in such a beautiful way. So it's got those higher stakes, but without ever topping over into the melodrama. It's handled in a different way. There's, for example, they land up sharing a hospital room in the cancer hospital, in the breast cancer ward, and of course the guy is not wanting anybody to. He's a news reporter. He's well known. He doesn't want anybody to know he's in the breast cancer unit and that he's got breast cancer. But there are these lovely, charming, sweet moments where they're both in their hospital beds in this ward and they're talking late at night, and there's this banter between them. And I think that's how you can. One of the ways, if you're writing a lighter rom-com, I highly recommend watching something like that to see how you can have both the heavy, the tragedy, the emotions, but done in a lighter way. And I think that's what the K-dramas do so well, is that you can have a rom-com like a business proposal, or I'm just trying to think what are some of the other. Pretty much every rom-com has got, What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, for example. It's light and fluffy, but it has its serious moments. And for me, it's that balance. Sorry, I'm talking a lot here. But
Oh, no. This is perfect. I'm listening. I'm like writing a lot of notes here. So taking notes like a good
Yeah.
student. Um,
So
I,
exactly, I think what you're going to do is look at your genre and go, what is the balance going to be? If you're writing a fantasy and there's high stakes, life and death conflict, then maybe the balance is going to be, let's say, 70 or 80% high emotion and 20% banter. And the same thing if you're writing like a Crash Landing on You, where you've got this tension between North and South Korea and soldiers and, spies and all of the stuff, you're going to have maybe, 80% suspense and with heightened emotions that go with it. And then you're going to have maybe 20% of banter and comedy. In fact, I think it's probably at least closer to 30 or 35% in Crash Landing on You. Whereas Uncontrollably Fond, being so much more serious, is going to be maybe a 90-10, between the balance between the light and the dark, the lighter, fluffy emotions. Business Proposal has its serious moments, but maybe 10 or 15% of the entire 16 episodes is serious and heavy and weighty. But there is enough of it to give the reader that feeling. It's not completely, and I think this is where, comparing it to like The Proposal, as much as I love The Proposal, there's nothing life and death about it. It's just, kind of nice that these two people find each other and land up together. But there's no big swelling emotions or big swelling passions. And that's what we get from the Senpai elements in the K dramas, is that deep swelling emotion, even if it's, you know, um, boyfriend on demand or something that's lighter and fluffier and doesn't have that kind of heavy weight to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking about it, I'm like, my thoughts were that I'm analyzing my favorite authors in romance and contemporary romance and who and how and what they do. And although I really like Ellie Hazelwood, I think she actually does try to, even though those are usually funny, she actually does try to put in higher stakes via like more having a villain there. But I don't think that she's a very good example of very high stakes in contemporary romance. But the other people who I like reading, Carly Fortune, she has a lot of senpai melodrama in her books. I don't know if you've read her. She has
I
like a
haven't.
yeah, she has a short series right now on Prime. It's called Every Year After, I think. But the book originally is called Every Summer After, and there is a big breakup. It's like, oh, should we be together? Should we not be together? There's a kind of like big betrayal, and what is it? So that's there is definitely, and there's death, and there's like higher stakes for sure. I already mentioned Kennedy Ryan does really good higher emotional stakes in contemporary romance. And Cara Bastone, I was introduced to her via very light and fluffy audio plays that she created for Audible, but then now she's on like book 4, I think, of an actual contemporary romance series, and all of those have a serious topic. Like there is she's pregnant, but it's not the child of the guy she actually is in love with, it's somebody else's, or they both are grieving the death of people in their life, or this is like a couple that is about to divorce, and they were in a horrible car accident. So I'm like, oh my god, when I'm listening to all of this just naming those tropes, I was like, this could be a K-drama. Right? just
Yep.
just if I say those things, it's like, oh, this could be a K-drama, oh, this could be a K-drama. So I think having more traumatic things probably in there, and then yeah, having like the exploration of those heavy themes. And even I was thinking, everybody loves Emily Henry, but one of her books, The Happy Place, I think was a very controversial one, because there are a lot of kind of heavier, sadder, bigger, higher stakes, and it's kind of also like a couple in trouble, right? I don't remember if they were married or not, but a couple in trouble, second chance. And I think a lot of people were like, well, this is so, why did they call her happy? Why did she call it Happy Place? It's like the least happy book of all of the books that she has written, the least fluffy. And I think that is kind of the wink there, right? It's kind of like, this is not the happiest. But I think it's important to know what the readers are coming here from. What are you writing? And I think I enjoy writing this heavier things because I also enjoy reading those heavier things. So I think that makes perfect sense. And then you kind of need to promise this to the reader. But if you're writing a contemporary romance, looking at like cataloging all of these contemporary romances that have this heavy um more melodramatic things, you do kind of have to go and dig into the more trauma as a result. Like, how do you raise stakes? Yes, illnesses for sure, yes, deaths for sure. And I always joke with my friends and readers that I love killing people in my books. Like, I think that there is some kind of death situation in every, pretty much every, or almost every book that I have written. Not every, but almost every, because this is the highest stake that you can get in contemporary romance as well. And I think that there is a little bit of discontent sometimes with, oh, like, is this trauma porn? Are you trying too hard to give all of these characters the worst imaginable backstories? And I think that's where the promise to the reader and what kind of a story are you writing is very important, because absolutely, if you're writing something that is like the proposal and is light and fluffy, and that the reader is there to open a book and go into this kind of nice and pleasant world. That's why I think, again, cozy fantasy is so popular. At the end of the day, when they're reading in bed and they want something light and they want something that alleviates the heaviness of their own day, then you probably do not want to include high melodrama senpai moments in there. But if your reader is there to get the heightened emotion, and like, I think part of why I like reading this stuff, I feel like my life is very ordinary. Like, I don't go on crazy adventures or impossible tasks. And I want my life that way. I want my life to be mm, calm and nice and not traumatic. I've had enough trauma in my childhood. I do not want that in my real life. But I do enjoy that in the imaginary life. And there is going to be a segment of readers who are there for that. So you need to make sure that that's what you're signaling. Oh, if you want a roller coaster of emotions, if you want to cry, if you want to feel like I took your heart out of your chest and then put it back in, then read my books. Then going into higher stakes, higher dramatic moments, giving worse backstories and the wounds that are really more dramatic to your characters would probably be the recipe to allowing yourself to having that higher stakes and higher melodrama, even if it's a contemporary story. I think the world, unfortunately, is a terrible place in a lot of cases. You open a newspaper, and you can find plenty of horrible things happening to people in contemporary world. So I don't think that this is that far fetched, even for contemporary situations. So it just like depends on what is your promise to the reader and what is your reader looking for as an experience. And I think yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Sorry. Oh, the other book I was thinking about, that is a fantasy book, but Alchemized. They have a lot of yearning and a lot of we cannot be together, and a lot of like enemies to lovers trope, I think will automatically allow you to get to the higher stakes, right? But true enemies to lovers, not, oh, we sort of disliked each other at the beginning of the book, and now by the middle of the book, we really like each other. That is not the same as enemies to lovers. I will die on that hill. Enemies to lovers, you really need them to be enemies first. Um, I feel like I lost you, Romy. Am I talking to myself? Did you? Yeah, I think Romy is frozen, at least for me. Guys, if you're watching, am I still going and is Romy frozen or are both of us frozen? Because I can't see Romy moving. If you can comment. Oh, yeah, Romy disappeared. Oh my God. I guess you will be back. If you have any questions in the meantime, or if you want to tell me what you are writing right now, what is your genre, and are you interested in exploring Sinpa, I always mispronouncing it, Sinpa in your stories, uh, send us a little message in the chat, and I'm sure Romy is going to be back momentarily. It's probably her connection. I'm going to send her another invite just in case. Here, I'm adding her back in. Thank you for being here live with us today. And this is what happens on lives. Technology is unpredictable. We were having trouble at the beginning. Substack was kind of not letting us connect properly. So maybe it is something going on with Substack today. I'm gonna hang the blame on Substack and not our own internet connections. But I sent an invite to Romy. So yeah, post here if you have what you're writing. Like, let's start with what genre you're writing. Welcome back.
Back.
I seriously think it's Substack challenging us today. Like,
Yes, indeed.
can they overcome all of the difficulties? What was the last thing you heard?
Well, I was just going to completely agree with you.
Go for
When
it.
you were talking about basically you need to know your reader, you need to know your audience and what it is your audience wants from you or what it is you want to deliver. And then obviously that's you've got to have a match between what you want to write, what you do write, and what the reader wants to read. And then obviously in marketing, you've got to then aim at the correct readers. But it's interesting, again, talking about the proposal, the proposal actually has really deep, heavy backstory. Poor Margaret lost her family as a child. She's been alone ever since, she was effectively orphaned. They sort of gloss over that and don't really dig deep into it. But she had pretty heavy trauma, but it's dealt with in a completely sort of superficial way, in a way. The focus is very much on the present rather than on the past. And I can't remember. There was something else you said that really resonated with me, and it's gone in one ear and out the other.
It's
So,
okay. It'll come back, but I
oh,
agree that
it's
go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say, that idea of throwing more bad stuff at your characters. That's great, but you've got to ensure that you're not just doing one. And I think that's where also those earlier K dramas didn't quite get it right, because it was just, oh, and then this bad thing happens, oh, and then this bad thing happens, oh, and then the parents go, and then, oh, now this person is wanting to break them up. It's just a series of events. Whereas more recently, and obviously what we want to do in our novels, is that it comes from a place that is crucial to the character, that maybe the decisions, the tough things that they are facing are integral to them, that it's connected to the story,
Yes.
um, that they are being challenged down deep in their beliefs. So, and I think that's where something even like a light and fluffy rom-com like A Boyfriend on Demand can resonate with readers, because or with viewers, because it taps into um, those. I'm sorry, and I've just lost my train of thought again. Sorry,
It's okay.
but yeah,
I loved Boyfriend on Demand, and it is light and fluffy, but it was very enjoyable. And I think partially I like that one because as a romance writer and reader, it was kind of both playing a satirical role, but also very heartfelt. It felt like they're trying to sort of make fun, but also she grows to understand why all of those boyfriends and why all of those tropes work for the person. It was not from just like ha 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 moment. It was both a moment, oh, let's try to make fun of it, but also now there is understanding on the other end. I feel like that is part of the arc, and that was something that I enjoyed. What you just said about the bad things just happening to them is not the way to go. 100% agree. I usually teach my students this technique to kind of litmus test if is this a lot of bad things just happening to them versus is there a consequence. And I always say after the half of the book, everything that is happening to them needs to be the consequence of their previous actions, but ideally like
yes,
quarter and forward. Like in the first quarter, you can have things happening to them, but after the quarter of the book, I want either all or most of the things to be the consequence of their own actions. And after half of the book, everything needs to be a consequence of their action. They have to have full agency. The readers are going to get fatigued if it is events like acts of God, Deus ex machina, right? It gets like worked for Greek tragedy, does not work really well for modern storytelling, Western storytelling anymore. So I usually teach I do not know if you've encountered that as well, yes, but no and technique.
yes. Mm.
And I think that's such an easy way to test things. So because we always, not we always, like most of the time, we want things to get worse for the characters up until like at least three quarters of the book, until the climax, right? So and instead of series of events, you want it to be connected. So how the yes but works is um, if something works out, so let's restart. When the character has a certain goal, they're trying to get to something, whatever they're trying to achieve. There are two possible results. They got it or they didn't get it. And if they got it, that's a yes answer. So let's say she wanted to start working for this company because she needs to have money for her grandma's medical treatment. I'm just coming up with stuff. And yes, she got in. Excellent. And then you want to have, and this is one of the K dramas that I watched. But she has a secret identity, and that secret identity means that she's married. And now that she's actually liking the guy, she can't actually show him that she likes him because she's married officially. So she can't be interested in him. So, yes, she got the job, but it's under secret identity and she has to hide her feelings. And then the other option is, oh, she wants to get something, but she doesn't get it. So that's a no. And in case of a no, you still want to have a consequence that is worse. So she doesn't get something. And as a result, something bad happens again to her, but it has to be connected to what she didn't get. And I can't off the top come up. I don't know if you can off the top come up with a K-drama example, but like I think in Star Wars, there was something where they trying to run away and they do not run away, and then they get in this
The
place where
trash
like they get
compactor.
crushed. Yeah, the trash, and they get into the trash compactor as a result. So no, they didn't get away without being unscathed, and now they're in this trash compactor. So it's they didn't get what they wanted and they get a worse situation, but it is all the consequence of their own action. Hopefully I'm explaining this correctly. I
Yes.
don't know if you want to add anything here, and I don't know if you have any example of the top of your head for the no and from K dramas. I'm going to think about that. I'm drawing a blank right now.
I'm sure pretty much because if you consider, I'm currently watching Lovely Runner, so I'm only just over the halfway mark. But that's exactly the situation. The story in Lovely Runner is um, this woman is a huge K-pop fan. She's got this band that she is a big fan of, and the lead singer of the band um, dies in the first episode, and she goes back into the past to 2009, I think it is, to try and stop his death from happening in the future. So it's time travel and all of this.
Awesome.
And she goes back to being a teenager, back into her teenage body, um, at a time where they were actually both lived in the same neighborhood, and she didn't realize that, of course, before he was famous. But now she changes things by connecting with him, by trying to stop him from getting a particular injury in his youth because she believes he's committed suicide in the future, and therefore he's depressed, and therefore she wants to try and take away the cause of what might have caused his depression later in life. But of course, as she changes things, obviously the future changes, and there's a couple of times that she goes back into the future and it's like, okay, I fixed that, I'm back in the future, oops, now something else has gone wrong. Now, go back into the past. And she's only got 3 chances to go back, and I'm on the 3rd chance. There's still several episodes to go, so I'm interested to see how they're going to handle the yes, but, or the no, and, because all the way through the show, just the minute she does one thing to change the future, something else changes. And sometimes it's funny. She goes, comes back into the future, and now her best friend and her brother have hooked up and gotten married, and they have kids. And she's like, whoa, this is not, when did this happen? Because that was not in the previous timeline. So, that's funny because now we're, laughing along with it. But along with that is, yes, something good has come out of the past and the changes she made. And, she's now got nieces and nephews and all sorts of things that she didn't have in her previous timeline. But this other thing has happened that has now twisted things into a bad spin. So I think that could be a good example of, that cause and effect all the way through the story. But there is
Yeah,
one
and
thing I just,
go ahead.
sorry, yes.
No, no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing I wanted to say, particularly about Senpai, especially, I don't know how we're doing on time, but
We're good.
I think it's also fairly cultural in that just there's that word han that they have in Korean, which is that longing, that grief, which is very much wrapped up as part of the Sinpa story in stories, because han is something that is uniquely Korean. It is this grief, the sort of generational grief, and I think the closest we probably get to it in the West is, for example, people who are descended from slaves, and we talk about genetic memory, that you sort of carry this baggage in a way that you've inherited. But mostly in the West, we are fairly individualized. And you can see that in our stories. So we tend to focus on this couple falling in love and getting together. And again, I'm going to go back to those old classic, the proposal, which I often use when I'm teaching, because most people have seen it somewhere along the way of the. But it's very much about this guy and this girl and how they connect. And yes, but it's very individualized. Whereas Korean culture in general is very communal. It's very much about community. It's about belonging. It's about being part of the collective, about thinking about, and they have another word which is, I'm just doing a blank on now. Starts with a J. Chong, I think it is, where it's almost like a form of tact, where when you're in a group setting, when you're with other people, you have to think about them and their needs, and you put the collective needs ahead of your own, which we definitely don't, we don't tend to think that way in the West. And that, I think, comes through in the storytelling. So often, you also mentioned right back at the beginning, there is an element of sacrifice in this, that the characters sacrifice something. There's very few of the K dramas, I feel, have an unqualified happy ever after. And some of the best ones, like Crash Landing on You or Goblin, um, The King Eternal Monarch, which I absolutely adore, they don't have a completely unqualified happy ever after. There's always a yes, but. Yes, they get the happy ever after, but it's not quite perfect. There's something, I don't want to give away too much, but for people who haven't seen them. But it's almost, there is that greater sense of sacrifice that we don't have. The proposal, Sweet Home Alabama, they're not really sacrificing anything. Yes, they have to sacrifice maybe a limiting belief or a preconceived idea, but they're not really giving up anything huge. Whereas in K dramas, they often do. They have to give up, and often, and I think it's because they have this collective view that you are giving up something for the community, that you have to sacrifice something for the greater good beyond yourself. And maybe it is sacrificing for your loved one. Maybe it's running that, being willing to give up your own life to save the life of the person you love. Or letting go the person. In Goblin, it's very much a case of letting go of the person you love because it's in their best interests. And that is, I think, where a lot of the Senpai comes from, is this sacrifice, these emotions that, quite frankly, are quite foreign to us as Westerners. Again, going back to the Han, it's baked into Korean identity, this idea of suffering and grief and yearning and this longing for something that has been lost. And it comes from their history, this history of, being colonized by Japan and et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes I do wonder, there's this bit of a cultural divide that maybe our books don't contain it just because it isn't in our genetic DNA, whereas it is in theirs. But obviously there is something in that is resonating with us, that we're yearning for as viewers and as readers. We want that, we want that sense of, firstly, community. And I think we want, we've become, as I say, this very nuclear family civilization. But what K dramas offer us is that sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of becoming part of something bigger than yourself. And that does require compromise. It does require sacrifice. So I think if we're wanting to increase that yearning in our books, if we want to increase that emotion and heighten the emotions, one way to look for it is by placing our characters more in a community that is like a family or a found family or a very tight-knit community, and obviously we get this in small town romance, or we can get it in small town romance, the sense of something bigger than ourselves that we have to sacrifice for. So that was just a point I wanted to raise, because I think there is this uniqueness to the K dramas that is appealing, but is quite alien to us.
I think I can relate to it again with my Russian roots, because the First World War, the Revolution, the USSR, the Second World War, the collapse of the USSR, collectively, the country and the people went through so many horrible things in a span of 100 years that I feel like there is that for sure in there. And then if you go back, it's like it's not that much better. And then the further you go back, it does not get that much better. So I think that could be also why I can relate to that, probably. And then I agree that the family and I think the Confucian principles also, they have very strong family principles and strong duty. And I'm also going like Russia is like part Western and part Asian. So there are a lot of things that I feel like are relatable, even though the religion is very different and all of that kind of stuff. But there is a huge sense of duty to your family, a huge sense of obligation and all of that kind of stuff still, even like in my parents' generation. So I think I can relate to those maybe as well, why K-dramas are so appealing. But one of the things that you were talking about that made me think of how writers can include it. I think that yes, we have very much nuclear families, and my brain went into for romance for the longest time. Harley Quinn was kind of the poster child for romance, right? And that's where the genre category romances came from, right? Because if we're looking at, and I'm not a romance historian, I may be completely conflating, and this do not listen to me, and please tell me if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking about if you're going back to the Wuthering Heights, there is a lot of family in there. Their family is a big part, and all of those stories are bigger than just the two people. But once I look at the Harlequin romances, I feel like the like 50, 60K shorter ones automatically, by the format that they were delivered in, made it so that you cannot focus on that many. You can have one subplot and maybe two important secondary characters, but you just cannot develop more than that in 50 to 60K. I always tell my students that every additional secondary character, every additional subplot in your brain, it's like 10K, 10K, 10K more words adding to the length of your book. If you're starting from 50K for just a couple, then like you're basically adding 10K with every new thing. I think that could also be how, sometimes the format, oh, they were mailed, or had to buy them, they were thin. I wonder what was the marketing and delivery. How did the marketing and delivery of the Harlequin romance form that category genre romance, and that format makes it so that you cannot make extensive, large works and large families, etc., etc. And then wondering in my head, oh, is that why series of standalones are so popular right now? Because it still allows you to have that focus on just the couple, but then the secondary characters and the found family, you get a chance to develop it into the next one where they are the primary. So you still get the sense of the family, but you can still write shorter and just develop it in the next of series of standalones and dig deeper, because I think that there is the desire in people to have that found family, or a lot of series of standalones are like a family, right? Brothers or sisters, and you get deeper into that family's history as a result too, but just in a different format. So I think that I'm wondering if there is a connection between what delivery formats are kind of forcing us into, and how what versus what the readers want, and how we find the answers in it. And I'm wondering again if romantasy is becoming more popular because the length is accepted to be a much bigger length. Thus, as you have much bigger length, you can have more subplots, you can have more secondary characters that are more developed, you can have more family, you can have more family members involved in all of that stuff. So the format does dictate or does restrict you in a way. So I think I do not have an answer, but that's where my brain kind of went. So I do not know if you have thoughts on that.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. And again, it's knowing your audience. What does your reader want? If they're wanting a short, quick read that they can get in, just get this love story and move on, then that's what you do. Then, you're going to be writing those category romances with the shorter word lengths. What you're probably not going to do is have a story that's focused entirely on these two people with no secondary characters or plots over 100,000 words, because that could there you're going to want that feel of depth to it, and a bit more layering. So yes, absolutely, knowing what, and obviously, if your reader is the kind of person, or the market that you're targeting is the kind of market that wants the big emotions and the found and the belonging and the community, then you're going to be looking at, you know then maybe that's just where you need to kind of go, well, category romance is not for me. And I know, when I was starting out as a writer, as you say, Harlequin were the publisher in town. In fact, they were kind of the only publisher in town when I first started in romance. And so everybody wanted to get in with them. But and I know a couple of people who wrote, book after book after book, and they got rejection after rejection after rejection. And sometimes they got some nice feedback from the editors, but it was still a rejection. Um, and partially it's because I think people were trying to write for the wrong kind of stories for what Harlequin publishes. And Harlequin has always been very clear on this is what our market is, this is what we do. They have obviously adapted over the years. And I think that's what you want, is you want to then find the publisher, if you're going traditional publishing, the publisher that aligns with the kind of stories you want to write. It's all well and fine to say, I just want to be published and I want to be published by this big name publisher. But if they're not writing the kind of stories you write, then it's a complete mismatch. So, but we're so lucky today. There are so many avenues to reach readers. You can self-publish. There are smaller digital first imprints. There are, all these different avenues. So the most important thing I think as writers we need to focus on is what kind of story do I want to tell, and who is my ideal reader, and where will I find that ideal reader? And those all have to be aligned for success, because otherwise you're trying to put, what's the saying, a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah. I think when I was writing my first book, I was giving zero thought to who's going to be reading it. Because I think writing your first book, a lot of times, especially if you do not come from an editing background or a background that already immerses you in the book world, in the publishing world, you're just trying to write a book. It's so hard. It's so challenging to write your first book, finish your first book, edit your first book, that I think I had zero bandwidth to also think about who's going to be reading it, or where is it going to be published. And I was writing mine on Wattpad, so I was posting, and it was very interesting because I actually had interaction with readers, and it was a fun way, I think, for me to get through the 8 months that it took me to write it and like 3 months that it took me to edit it. But the benefit, I think, of writing multiple books is not just because you learn how to write the book, is that you sort of have a little bit more bandwidth and knowledge and awareness of who your reader is, what the publishing work is like, and how to match the two, how to kind of if you are writing circles, instead of trying to put them, as you said, in the square hole, how to find the circles and how to connect with those. And I was taking a sales course. I'm almost done with it for my book coaching side of business, to kind of figure out how can I sell my services better, because I've never taken any sales classes. I know nothing about sales, and I was struggling trying to figure it out. And like the biggest thing that, not the biggest thing, one of the things that resonated with me there was um, when you're trying to sell something to a person, if you're trying to persuade them, then this is wrong. Like, this situation shouldn't be happening. Like, you should be, it's more like, oh, this person already wants what you have. They're already looking for this. And you basically are trying to give them that final nudge, or that final signal that, yes, yes, I am the person who you're looking for. Instead of, it's very hard and a lengthy process to create the need in the person, and to say, you know what, you have never read a dark romance before and you have no clue about it, but my dark romance is going to be exactly what you want. And then it's just much harder. It's not impossible, but it's just a much harder journey. So going back to, finding the people who already want what you are writing is going to make your job of selling your book to them so much easier. And that goes back to the traditional publishing, finding the right agents, right? You're not saying, oh, this is my agent, this is the agent that I love for whatever reason, and then they don't represent your genre, or that they're not interested in your particular kind of a story. No, part of the art of looking for the agents that could be a good representation is that they are looking for the stories, and that's why you look at the manuscript wish list and all of that stuff, right? They're going to tell you, I am looking for these stories. Do not say, oh, well, they're not looking for my story, but my story will convince this particular agent to like this kind of story and to represent. Usually they're saying it not just because they already like the story, but also because they have a certain network of editors and publishing houses that they work with that are looking for those kinds of stories as well. Like, if they're not, they, if, yeah, anyways, I'm going to stop here. I don't know if you have
That's
anything to
exactly it.
add that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also why, if you do get rejections from agents and publishers, it's not personal. It really is just a mismatch, that maybe they're not completely aligned with the way that you're telling your story. It's not personal. It doesn't mean you've written a bad story. And I think hopefully that just alleviates some of the pain around getting rejections. It's just knowing that each rejection is just leading you to the right place, because you do not want to be in the wrong place, and trying to,
Yeah.
as you say, I love that analogy of, you want to try and find the people who already want what you're selling, or who already want what you're writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of the big aha moments for me in this sales course, is that if it feels like you're trying to shove it down their throat, like that should never be the feeling. That should never be the relationship. Like that is automatically a red flag saying this probably is not your client and you're probably not their coach, because this is not what it's supposed to feel like, right? You're supposed to already want to be in each other's presence, etc., etc. We are coming up to an hour. We didn't really talk about yearning, so I do not know. I don't think that we have a plan for our next month as a topic. Uh, do we want to talk more deeply about yearning maybe next time? How
I'm
does
more than
that feel
happy
like?
to. It's one of
Okay.
my favorite. I've also been watching lots of the Chinese short dramas lately, and they're very big on that yearning, that long suffering kind of tension between. So
Yeah.
yes.
Let's do that. Yearning is the September topic, and if you guys have any questions, comment, and if you're watching this in re-watching, whatever, in recording, just send us a little note. And if you have any other topics or any other questions around K-dramas, or just around writing in general. I know we focus on romance here just because we're both romance writers, but if you have any other questions about, and we kind of touched a little bit about on publishing journeys, if you have any other questions, let us know. I think I am running out a little bit of the topics that I kind of had in my mind, so
Okay.
uh, I would not mind at all if people have their own suggestions, but we'll come up with other stuff. There's so much to
We
talk
will.
about. So, any
Absolutely.
other final parting words on Senpai from you?
Oh, I found a nice quote somewhere, and I can't remember which article it was in, but where they talk about it, it's the emotional engine of the story, and I love that as a description of it. Yes, the emotional engine. And let's face it, we write romance. It's all about the emotions. So if we can tap into those emotions and create that yearning, those heightened emotions, I think that really resonates with readers, no matter what genre we write or subgenre.
Yeah, I was having a call with a potential one-on-one coaching client this week, and he was not sure if he wants to put in a romantic subplot in his fantasy story, and we were kind of talking about the romance as a genre, and the romance as a genre requires a happily ever after, right? So there's already the answer. The readers know that these people will get together, because if they don't get together, it is a romance. It's not a romance, it's a love story. And there are plenty of great love stories, but right, if it ends in tragedy, usually it's a love story, not a romance. But if you're reading a romance, it's a happily ever after. So the people who start reading the book already know the answer. They know that these people are going to get together. So you have, as an author, a much more difficult job to keep their attention and to have them flipping to the next page. And I 100% agree with you. Romance readers are there a lot of times, most of the times, maybe for the emotional experience. They want to feel the things. They want to feel. And I think that's what K dramas do to us. They make us feel, and sometimes co feel, sometimes feel an opposite thing from the reader, but from the character. But I think Senpai is definitely one of the big things that is part of we're going to make you feel while you're watching this. So that's why I think it's so great for romance authors to take lessons from there. And yeah, how can you make the readers feel things? Ugh.
Feel the way we feel when we watch the K-dramas. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we can end it here. Do you have anything to promote this month?
Another thing
Anything you
this
would
month,
like
I
to
have
say?
been wall to wall doing edits for clients, which is nice. It's money in the bank. But yes, I must say everything else has just gone on hold. So hopefully, I'm hoping for things to ease up in the next few weeks by the next time we meet.
Okay. I have, because I'm still waiting for that course that you promised me. I'm going to poke you because I'm like invested in that right now. I have been doing a lot of summits, and I also had a vacation. So I feel like, and I've been doing the sales class. So I feel like I've been in this hamster wheel. So I'm trying to take the next couple of weeks easier. And then probably in the middle of August. So the next time we talk, I probably will be promoting my next online course. I'm going to start on September 8th. Write Your Novel 101, an online course for people who are writing their first novel to kind of give them clarity and direction, and hold their hand as they're trying to understand what kind of story they're writing, how to write a story, what are the key principles. And it's a 3 months program that's going to go September, October, and November. I haven't started promoting it yet. I don't have everything lined up, but if you're on my newsletter, you're going to be notified, and I'm sure I'll post something on Substack about it too. Actually, probably should remember to do that. That's
Yes.
that's my next thing coming up. And other than that, just come and join us next time in August. I don't know if we have a date. Let's, because we usually
It's
do.
usually last Thursday of the month, isn't it?
Okay, so it's going to be August 27th then.
Okay.
We'll see you guys then, and I'm super excited. It's going to be fun. We'll talk about yearning, which is, I think, one of my top three emotions in romance for sure. I'm not sure if it's like number one or number two, but it's pretty much, yeah, yearning is what I'm there after when I'm reading romance.
Are we going to have so much fun talking about that?
Sounds good. See you next month.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Cheers. Bye.